All right. Hey there, friends. Welcome to Hawkeye Speaks. Let's jump right into it. What's the purpose of life? What's the meaning of life? What are we doing here? What do kids have to be excited about living for? And if we can't answer that question, we should go back to the drawing board, honestly. I think that there are people that can answer the question, which are people that have really strong families right now that are intact with happy children in general. Anyone that doesn't um, acknowledge family difficulties, I think would be making it up. But maybe you know what I'm saying. I have one friend in particular I followed for years. I've left Instagram since, but it was really always amazing to see her as a kind of a matriarch of the family and to have all these kids and grandkids and wow, and it's all a farm-based operation and to see that and like I say, if I think if I were to ask her, what do kids have to be excited for? She might say, well, coming home for holidays, having their own children, having us to be there to help them out, having a stable piece of land or some kind of economic resources to fall back on that they know how to use, that they're not in danger of falling into a lot of the pitfalls of modern society, like addiction and just technologization that takes a lot of our young people because they were raised around a lot of values. I've seen it with my own eyes, and I've also seen kids that have not had such an easy time. That's for sure. I have unfortunately seen some kids that did not make it to teenage years. The kids that I even, babysat when they were kids, my daughter's age. And now we've got a lot of people talking about the AI, and the AI is going to cause problems. Well, what I want to share is I think all those problems have already been here. That Jacques Ellul's techne was really what's going on. And that when people are talking about Descartes creating dualism, to me, as I've spoken about, I believe that it's words. And I believe that words are a double-edged sword. Of course, I believe in the meaning, sharing value with words. I certainly would not imply that words are inherently evil. It wouldn't be here sharing what I feel is valuable with you right now if I believe such a thing. But I certainly believe that they can be used to deceive, as well as we from the first tool, language, we then go on making all manner of tools to the point where we have now created tools that are intelligent and even with AI powered robotics, now we have tools that are scarily alive and doing things, right? And it's a very scary time. It's a very scary time indeed. And I understand that people are concerned with the AI. But again, this type of thinking, reductionist thinking, it's been around for so long. So long. So what is the purpose of life? What are we here for? What would be the ultimate amount of energy? Whether you fancy monetary currency or land or what do you envision happiness? In that of having a family and children and support, or in having yachts and ski trips and Bugattis and of course there's a bit of a variety there, but in terms of energy, if we looked at all of that stuff as energy, we should be cognizant a a it's Keelan Morgan put it as in the West we have a fixation on the sunset compared to the sunrise. This archetype of the East would be to look to the sunrise, which to me means waiting for the morning, what's to come, more the yin energy, which is not, again, it's not looking back at this morning, it's looking towards tomorrow's morning through the night to hold fast. Whereas the Western mechanistic left brain view would be to kind of shoot our shot at sunset. Here we go. Let's give it our all right now. Go get a degree, get a loan, buy a house, get yourself in debt, and then you'll be happy. Well, we know that there's some problems with that entire scenario, but also, again, back to this idea of energy, like, oh, what if we could have it all and money and power, whatever, again, whatever you could even imagine, okay? what if you just shift the focus and realize that true wealth is in the health of the land and the health of community and the health of future generations? If we're not fixated on the sunset, like what could we ultimately have right now? Well, that's pretty greedy, right? I mean, I think that if we just shift that again, we could see that what we could ultimately have right now in terms of the most coherent usage and capacitance of energy would be the buildup of potential for tomorrow, the passing on of health and wellness. And if we're in a mode of depletion currently, how are we going to see prosperity and abundance later on? Which is, it does really tie in with these questions of, is intelligence inherent and primary in nature? In fact, I find that if we ignore this question, if we rule out, if we exclude intelligence at the outset, we don't magically get it back in the end. That's what I'm saying. I'm sticking with it. As well as good and evil. Just wrote a little thing yesterday talking about evil, and I don't. I mean, I would rather build this philosophical, build the bridge with philosophy instead of getting directly into the theological camps or even the complete materialistic and different idealistic philosophical camps. Okay, but good and evil is certainly some terminology that's been around a long time and has to do with what is just, what is morally motivated decision making and ethical behavior. It's pretty important, isn't it? Isn't it pretty important? And then I think it ties into quality of life and what is it? Right? What does it mean to be alive? What is energy? What is information? What is good and evil? To know the good and to not do it, is this a form of evil? Well, one of the important things about this philosophical question is that if we're drawing any type of lines that are exclusionary beyond the human species, well, I feel that we're making quite the mistake. I mean, obviously, there are obvious implications, such as if a human is beating an animal or abusing an animal. How about if humans are removing the conditions that are necessary to continue in further life? Is that abuse upon the unborn? These are real questions, and it doesn't. It's this is that's a question that goes much further beyond, say, the abortion implications of like, oh, we believe in unborn life in that way. I'm talking about all generations, but for me, I'm also talking about the soil. I'm talking about the health of the environment and the energy that is not only the energy storage within the organism, but is within the relational structure of the organism and environment. So when we look at what is energy, were they using the pyramids to harness energy? What type of energy are we talking about? Are we talking about energy that you would put in wires and powered devices with, or are there other forms of energy we should actually be mindful of? And in specific, I'm referring to chi energy, subtle energies, scalar energies, implosive energies, um, Tesla transmission types of working with energy, but I'm again not really speculating that when we speak of these ancient structures as in harnessing energy, to me it's more powerful to think that the energy that they were harnessing was the more powerful type, not as in powerful that it had immediate explosive effects, not as in powerful as in it could kill you, or you could, that's the wrong type of thinking. Powerful is longevity. It's in the land being full of chi, energy, and vitality to the point where there's species diversity. There's birds singing, there's mice and owls, there's snakes and rabbits, there's all types of life flourishing. And the opposite is degeneration, it's desiccation. Okay. So if we can't answer the question, what should young people be living for? Then, yeah, I think we should step back and ask ourselves these questions. What does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to be healthy? Okay. I was starting to speak about the philosophers of good and evil, and one of the primary implications of this is that if you can't, in an active debate, at the drop of a dime at any time, defend your position in regards to some philosophical discussion about good and evil across the discussion of, say, veganism, is it okay to eat animals or not? Then how powerful is philosophy, and where are we as a society? I mean, these debates around eating animals or not have been around forever, and there's just ways to avoid the conversation and ways that it could be addressed, and I'm suggesting that the latter is certainly avoided. So, if someone, I had mentioned my friend, a farmer, if someone was well versed in, say, regenerative agriculture, if they knew not only the value of the reciprocity of caring for animals, animal husbandry in a responsible way, and the incredible severity, okay, and the blessing of taking an animal's life and utilizing it for your nourishment, okay, that's special in itself. All right, and oftentimes the veganism thing is idealizing a high ideal. It's a utopian ideal, but it may misinterpret some of these key aspects of life that of course, in fact, part of what life is for us to be fucking and eating each other all the time. When we lose that, we're already turning into machines. All right, but beyond the value of the sacred reciprocity of raising animals, and even if you didn't raise it yourself, to take its life and to accept it as nourishment, it's a very special thing. But beyond that is to have the simple knowledge that, for instance, ruminant animals behaving as herds is absolutely necessary to counter desertification on arid lands, as I'm pointing out like this beyond us here, as far as the eye can see, a vast amount of the world's surface is desertifying land, and it is just as Alan Savory prescribed, and many, 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 many others have been speaking about and teaching about over the years, is that these types of environments require the relational structure of animals. Okay, and humans are a part of that. The idea that humans are just a cancer on the earth is, in fact, a large part of the problem of why a young person might want to end their lives. Okay, to tell young people that you don't have a future, that climate change is going to end it all in 12 years, though all that stuff is not panning out like it was doomsday predicted at all, is it? And now we have more and more and more and more doomsday. There's always doomsday predictions. And how do you think those are on the psychology of children? It may be a fun, fanciful thing for adults to engage in this end times apocalyptic belief. I wrote a chapter in the book about this, and I got the term from Michael Mead in his book, Why the World Doesn't End. Great book, where he named it the myth of apocalypsis. And I doubt he made it up either. It's something he studied in mythology. Is that this whole thing is recurring throughout every society and every people's within societies. Every single culture has an end story, end times stories. It's all going to end tomorrow for this or that reason, and it just never seems to end, does it? We're always here, but things certainly do change. The climate is definitely changing, though the climate change narrative may be a complete hoax. I mean, both are true. And how do you discern the difference? Okay, so So young people being told that they're a cancer on the earth is overpopulated. That is that's not a factual statement. The earth is overpopulated. It's not factual in any way whatsoever. It's a made up thing, just like a lot of elements of the previous point we were touching on, in that it assumes a set carrying capacity of the land, that the earth could only hold so many people. Whereas, in fact, if we understand the spectrum of vitality to morbidity, that life is all about health and that the biosphere is alive. That's what nature is that it's a set of systems that all come together full of life that in fact kind of equals a living system that then even has basically a mind to it that's called the noosphere or the God mind or the unified consciousness or there's so many names for the field in between us, the field. Okay, but if we don't have a capacity for what health is, because remember we have a science that has excluded intelligence. We have a science that's based on a big bang and then entropy, which most people believe to be the dissipative side of the second law of thermodynamics. My work has specifically defined it as such and then named centropy as actually the better half of the second law, if you want to still call it those, which says that centropy is yin, the feminine force, and entropy is yang, the masculine, explosive force. We always have to have both. It's a balancing act, literally on a toroidal energy system where we're like riding the wave, very literally. That's what life actually is in an algebraic to geometric sense. Absolutely. Within mathematical terminology to metaphysical terminology, that's what it is. But it's interesting to see that not only has yin energy been excluded from the sciences and imagined to not exist, there's no generative principle in science other than we have the secret societies and the G of the Masonic symbol, which is the generative principle. So it may have been kind of cut from the public eye, but but not only is it non-existent within the sciences proper, okay, we have the elephant in the room of this lack of an ability for science and religion to talk to each other. Okay, to me, science and the joining of church and state is the origin of the term fascism. When it was first brought into use was for Mussolini when he got support from the Vatican for his imperialist endeavors into Ethiopia. Okay, that's when the term fascia, the fascia, it's a thing, a hammer looking thing, or just a bundle of reeds, right? It's an old Roman term, but it came into use as fascism when Mussolini gained support from the Pope. And it's the joining of church and state. And today we have this huge elephant in the room. Science and religion don't talk to each other. Children are brought up in families that cannot resolve this and don't talk about it and are taught sometimes and even perhaps the majority of the times things that are completely conflicting in school versus at the dinner table versus on social media. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's a problem. So, in addition to being a cancer on this earth, and the earth is overpopulated, and that's some heavy stuff, isn't it? And we're running out of oil and blah, blah, freaking blah. And then once again, it's always kind of the same every year. In that, well, inflation keeps happening and the dollar's worth less and less. And your taxes still really stay the same and you're making the same amount of money. And your kids are still told they need to go get a degree and follow this pipeline, but less and less of that pipeline ends up working out. The divide between the upper and the lower classes, as they've been called, okay, continues to broaden. So, if there's no constructive principle in the sciences, and there's this big fight, and there's this elephant in the room that creation and evolution have nothing to do with each other, well, which is it's a really big problem, especially considering the fact that we have abundant resources to show that creative evolution is actually demonstrably true and that we do have intelligent design in nature, which can be the foundation of the sciences and theology. But where I was going with this also is that it's quite a fallacy that the church and state is so divided today and that fascism is used to describe other things, when the scientists are still based on these religious fundamentalist ideas. The Big Bang, it's a rather fundamentalist thing if you haven't looked into it. As soon as you get beyond the mainstream narrative about Big Bang cosmologies, you will hear countless people saying, oh, that's a totally religious fundamentalist type of story being used for cosmological, supposedly objective. Okay, how did we get a big bang and then everything came from nothing? And everything's constantly boiling down to nothing. The second law of thermodynamics, it doesn't work out. It doesn't work out at all. And what we end up having is also a society that not only kind of bases the value structure around, well, you just have to make money, and, well, it also accepts not only a healthcare system that is actually just a sick care system that is literally has a complete, giant, huge corporate and dollar sign advertising platforms for pharmaceuticals, right? We all know this, the nonstop barrage of every type of pill you can imagine. We have a sick care system, but it's even worse than that, that we have a society that doesn't promote health. Okay, there are people that exercise, that's great, but it's not generally treated as a responsibility, and even it could be some form of discrimination to insinuate that it should be. Whereas that's an interesting conundrum because happiness comes from being healthy. So you couldn't promote you couldn't promote being healthy and doing healthy things because that's discrimination against, fat people or gay people or whatever. Like, everyone's just allowed to be whoever you are. It's fine. It's fine. We're all different. Every single one of us is absolutely different. That is the one thing that is guaranteed and should be celebrated. Diversity is the rule, not the exception. Absolutely no two people think alike. There is no such thing as neurotypical except AI. When two brains think or two minds are thinking and they would say the exact same thing in a typical fashion, I mean that is the computer, right? So this whole thing, and it's not to be down on people that are neurodivergent and have autism and ADHD and all of these things, because people are using those terms to say, hey, like, I don't see the world the way that you guys are seeing it, and that's something we should be paying attention to. I'm not saying this to put anyone down. I'm saying, hey, I think we should have a society where people don't want to kill themselves, where young people feel encouraged to go on and do productive things. Okay, but to shift into a different direction with that, capitalism blamed as the enemy. Young people today, unfortunately, don't know the meaning of a lot of, very kind of plain, simple terms like, what does capitalism mean? And this could even be society wide. The capitalism just simply means the private ownership of goods and services. A crony capitalism society is a much different thing that we have today. A corporate socialism, you know. But bigger than that too, liberal and conservative, these are big words today. Republicans and Democrats, what's the difference? What are the branches of government? Much less. I mean, young people today in general, okay, we have a knowledge gap. Maybe we have a knowledge gap I've heard throughout society. I would certainly believe it. That we certainly have a lot of impressive intellectuals, and when you get up to that level, people are speaking in ways that other people can't understand. So that's one request that I would make. We need to address, and this is a request from my daughter too. We need to make materials that speak to the people that need them, not just about our ideas and theories and the way we want to say them. Like this talk that I'm doing right now is only going to be something that 1 out of 1 million people will watch. Almost no one on the planet would sit through this guy rambling here in his living room for, it's probably been a half an hour now. Young people will never, ever watch this. Okay. So I may have some important things to say, but it's incumbent upon us to get up and do something to actually show some productive results. So I was touching on the capitalism there. Well, it's I'm a big fan of actually a capitalist society in theory, but I don't also like to get a loan for interest. I've never had a loan from a bank, so for me to go and start a business right now, I certainly have no privilege that would allow me to access money to start a business. Though I would like to. There's several businesses I would like to start. I don't really particularly want to go back to doing construction for employment. And other things even the woodworking, it's a bit hard on the body, and I've done a lot of woodworking in the past. I think I would like to move on if possible. But I'm demonstrating just in saying this about myself that hey, it ain't that easy to start a business supposedly in this place where capitalism is the problem. Well, if capitalism is the problem, why can't people just go out and start businesses? Well, because we have a corporate takeover, right? We know we lost all the mom and pop businesses. We don't have a lot of encouragement for cooperative structures because this is just it's a good place to leave it as well. Is that I mentioned that how could a philosopher discuss veganism. And what I'm implying by that is if you don't know about the whole situation of how humans have always and in fact need to interact with livestock, that livestock are in a way like the gateway between us and nature because we do eat animals and the way that we interact with them matters immensely. And all of the other animals in nature, as well as all of the every type of critter that there is. Okay, insects are considered animals, but we have the microbe class, fungi. They're all watching our every move basically to see like, hey, you guys going to make decisions that allow us to live or not. Okay, and those are the larger implications of good and evil that I kind of started to touch on. Okay, and if a philosopher is not informed upon these things, which is in a way forgivable because you got to remember, we grew up in a society that didn't know anything whatsoever about soil health and ecology and biology. Didn't even have a bio in it. Just like bodies are just machines, right? Just give them some drugs. So I forget exactly where I was going to go with that. Hey, that's a good place to leave it. Just I was going to say something in regards to one other thing I was going to touch on. If you go check out my book, I wrote an entire chapter. You go to weavetheground.com, weavetheground.com. I'm going to keep this website up for you guys and free and accessible for as long as I can. But use it now while it is available, okay? And if you go there and check out the curriculum, it's free. There it is, the entire curriculum, and you can just take it and do whatever you want with it. In the book, too, I wrote an entire chapter called The Door Just Opened, which is about many fields in ecology that are brand new. Because, like I was saying, we grew up in a society that didn't actually know anything about soil health or the microbiome or the energy relationships in soil that maintain hydrological cycles. Because soil health is actually what regulates the climate. Like soil health is climate stability, not atmospheric carbon. That's a minute factor. I'm not saying it's not real, but yeah, it ain't the real deal. Okay, so yeah, I wrote this entire chapter about things that young people could be excited for. Okay, and once again, I mean, they're to be able to go out and start businesses, and how about businesses like we hear this about this in third world countries as a mythical thing, but we need it in America right now. We need it all over the world where we have microloans for young people and for ambitious people and for people that have knowledge about what regenerative stuff actually is, not a buzzword. So that people like me and people like my daughter, I mean, if she was inclined to do so, young people, let's say, could start actually regenerative businesses that actually bring real long-term wealth. Okay, and when I go like this, I mean real wealth. It's in the health of the land. Okay, we're only as healthy as those around us, and that goes for like pick your brother up, this whole we are a brother's keeper. But again, I'm inclining that this is about our relationship to soil health and ecology as well, and that there is a vast you know disposition, or what's the term, between urban and just completely vacant environments. And again, I'm looking out here, there's nothing out there as far as the eye can see. And a lot of the world is like that. And so we have overcrowded areas, the overpopulation thing. No, the earth is not overpopulated. There are overcrowded areas, and then there's areas that are completely empty. And the amount of capacity that any given piece of land has is completely a factor of how we interact with it. Okay, because we reap the we reap what we sow. You know, if you plant corn, you're gonna get corn. Peace, everybody.